Hi, everyone. DeMarco here, General Manager of DeMarcoSports.com. This is going to be your Tuesday video report. A couple of complimentary plays in college hoops coming your way in just a second. In the SEC, a pretty good showdown happening in Knoxville, where Tennessee is a double-digit chalk at home against a red-hot South Carolina team, a Gamecocks team that I backed on Saturday and cashed in with a top-rated 15-time play when South Carolina, laying 6, beat Missouri by 8, showing no letdown after hammering Kentucky last week in Columbia. Can they cover that big number against Tennessee? We'll talk about that game. And then in Big Ten country tonight, two disappointing teams meeting in East Lansing as Michigan State hosts Michigan. Again, another double-digit spread. Which way do we go there? I'll break both of those games down for you in just a second. As far as me yesterday, here on the video report, took a split. Gave you the Denver Nuggets at home against Milwaukee. Yeah, that coaching change really made a big difference with the Bucks, didn't it? Congratulations, Doc Rivers, for taking over that team. And then I lost with Oklahoma City against Minnesota. I was a little on the fence with that game. I did mention yesterday that the Thunder, for as good of a season as they have had, the one thing you always have to be concerned with them is that their inability to do well down low on the post, under the boards, is always going to haunt them. And it did last night as Rudy Gobert just was a defensive force and owned the boards against against Oklahoma City. And Karl Anthony Towns had a great game too. And when Chet Holmgren is struggling, as he has in the past two games offensively, it really does hurt them because, again, the Thunder are just not a strong team down low. So took a split, but hey, it happens sometimes. So let's get, and then my best bet yesterday, by the way, I had the LA Clippers. I was going for NBA best bet winner number 17 out of 22. And I apologize to all LA Clippers fans because your team that had won 5 straight, well, I backed them last night. I put the kibosh on them as they got crushed by Cleveland last night. So we look to rebound this evening. Hey, somebody here on the comment section down below had asked my opinion about whether or not games are fixed, specifically in the NFL. It's something that I could never write an answer that was good enough in the comment section. So I figured, let me quickly address this here today. And it is a question that I am asked all the time over the years. Do I believe they are? Absolutely not. Are they rigged? Absolutely not. But listen, that's like trying to convince a Republican or a Trump supporter that the 2020 election was not stolen. You either believe it or you don't. I call it sore loser syndrome. No, I'm not talking about the election here. I'm talking about whether or not you believe the games are rigged or not, because you always hear the claims that games are rigged or they're fixed after someone suffers a bad beat. It always happens. A bad call influences a game. You lose, or the general public, the ones that lose and suffer that a bad beat, they're the ones that are screaming from the rooftops, the game's fixed. The officials had it in. Listen, do you realize how strenuous the background checks are for NFL officials and the conditions that they have to meet in order to be members of NFL officiating crews? Now, could there be a bad apple that slips through? Of course. Just like there's bad politicians, just like there's bad FBI agents, CIA agents, and everything else. There's always that possibility. But this is not like the NBA scandal with the disgraced ref, who I'm not going to give his name out because I think he's still a sports tout, probably sucks, back in 2007, when you have a couple of refs who can influence the over-under in an NBA game or a college game even because of the number of officials on an NFL field, the eye in the sky, etc. No, it just doesn't happen. Now, have there been instances, and you certainly heard them, where you'll hear about a rogue tennis player maybe throwing a match? Yes. A boxing encounter that may have been thrown? Yes. Listen, I covered boxing for, 9 years. And there are still veteran guys in the boxing industry that I used to talk to at that time that still believe that the Liston Ali fight the infamous Listenov-Lee fight with the Phantom Punch, that it was a fixed bout. I don't know. I've watched that hundreds and hundreds of times. I've talked to enough guys that obviously this fight was, before my time, that will tell you one thing, and others will tell you that it was a fixed fight and Liston was on the take. It's public perception. I once took a flight across country from Philadelphia to Las Vegas, and a guy saw me updating my sites, doing my research. And for the next 4.5 hours, this guy told me, and believed fervently how games are fixed in the NFL. And you, the public, you don't see, because the TV networks manipulate what you see, that you didn't see in the corner off the screen or to the side off the screen, that the TV networks manipulated what you saw, so you didn't see how officials off the field were influencing the calls on the field to their NFL brethren. This guy also wore little aluminum tinfoil hats, I believe, and hung out with Aaron Rodgers down at his black light dojos, I believe, before it was popular. I mean, this guy was nuts. Again, it's what you believe. The other thing is this. Money is the root of all evils when it comes to fixing games. But money is also the reason you can't fix games on a professional level, because how much money can you possibly pay a professional athlete in order to influence a game? Now, could it happen on the college level where players are not getting paid the bucks and vulnerabilities exist? Possibility. But the other thing you have to realize, the eyes and the ears that are monitoring such situations are your sports books. And nowadays, as opposed to 10, 15 years ago, those sports books are even more unified, because corporations, Boyd's, Caesars, etc., they own multiple sports books. They're conglomerates. It's not like in the old days where you had all these independent sports book operators. They are now unified, and they are now watching these lines like hawks. They're aware of any big bets coming in on one side or another, as opposed to being able to go in the old days to the frontier and placing a monster bet because nobody would pay attention. It's just monitored more closely. And that's why I don't believe it happens, because of the money factor and because of the eyes and ears as well. So again, I just don't think it happens. But again, I don't think you could ever convince those that think it does, that it doesn't, and vice versa. I will tell you one little quick story. So for 6 years, back in the 90s, now we're talking before the internet really made its emergence, one of my side jobs was controlling and gathering all the injuries in college basketball, college football, the NFL, and the NBA for a sports and gaming newswire based in Las Vegas, which every casino in Las Vegas, every sports book in the USA, and so many gamblers and bookmakers subscribe to. And I took it over from somebody else who was just doing a pathetic job, because they would simply list players. They really didn't give in-depth injury information. They would simply put forward XYZ is questionable for a game, out for a game, doubtful for a game, and they wouldn't give any information. Was that player, and remember, in college basketball, nobody knew what was going on. Was that player a starter? Was he a key reserve? Was he averaging 17 points a game? Was he averaging 2 points in 4 minutes per game? I took it over. They paid me a considerable amount of money. I had contacts, I had resources, I had the ability to get this information. I can't tell you how I used to get this information, but it was the ability to control and issue all that information. It dawned on me one day in college basketball, the very first season. It was a Mid-America Conference team. I happened to find out at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time that this Mid-American Conference team, one of their starting forwards and one of their starting guards, two guys that combined to average almost 31 points a game. One was hurt and one had been suspended. Nobody had this information. This team suddenly went, or they were a 2.5-point favorite when I got this information. I had this information. I send it. I give it to them. And within a half hour, that 2.5 point favorite which was a road favorite, turned into a 3.5 point underdog, and they subsequently lost. And afterwards, as I'm sitting there and going, I'm thinking, my God, I had all that power to influence a line if I had no morals and no scruples by withholding that information, betting the game, tipping off other people, letting anybody know that I had this information before anybody else did. Information is power. When you hear about people talking about inside information, in that particular instance, I had it. But that was my job, to gather that information, to release it to the wire service, to release it to the sports books so they could set the lines the way they had to. So, guys, again, going back to the original point, games aren't fixed. Never believed it, never will. This isn't the 1950s again with the New York point shaving scandal. That was real. Those guys were working in hardware stores, NBA players, professional ball players were working in hardware stores, department stores in the off season because they made $14,000 a year. Times have changed. Okay, let's get to your complimentary plays. Tennessee is a 13.5 point favorite at home against South Carolina. South Carolina, contrasting styles. Tennessee wants to accelerate the pace. South Carolina wants to take air out of the ball. Do I think Tennessee can beat South Carolina tonight? Absolutely. Was I thinking of using the Volunteers tonight as my best bet? Absolutely. They're a team that's 10-0 at home. Did they struggle a little bit at Vanderbilt on Friday? Yes, they only beat Vandy 75-62 in Nashville. But last two home wins, beat the hell out of Alabama by 20, beat Florida by 10. They also beat Mississippi by 26 in Knoxville in their SEC home opener. They have won 5 straight against South Carolina by 20-point margins. They've covered 6 straight in the series. South Carolina, impressive though. Last Tuesday at home, beat the hell out of Kentucky 79-62, beat Missouri, as I said earlier. Laying 6, beat them by 8 Saturday at home, a game that I had them. They have won 3 straight, 10 of 12 in their 3 SEC road games. They beat Arkansas by 13, beat Missouri by 2. I think it was in overtime, and got crushed at Alabama by 27. It's the tempo for South Carolina. As I said, they take the air out of the ball. According to KenPom.com, their adjusted tempo out of 362 teams ranked, they're 349. The only reason I didn't use Tennessee tonight is, do the Volunteers get caught looking ahead to Saturday's game at Kentucky? The line has come down from 14 to 13 from overnight. It's so tempting to take South Carolina in this contest, but I still think the Volunteers are the better play at home. And I'm willing to lay the points with Tennessee because this is still, again, a South Carolina team that got hammered by a strong offensive team in Alabama by 27 points. A South Carolina team, again, that struggled to beat a bad Missouri team in Columbia. Beating Arkansas by 13, the Razorbacks are having a bad season. So I'm going to go with Tennessee. Your other play, Michigan State minus about 11.5 at home against Michigan. Now, Michigan State's coming off the loss at Wisconsin over the weekend. Lost that game by 15.5 points as a 3.5 point road dog. Michigan is just a bad team. Listen, bad team. I don't know how Juwan Howard is going to keep his job. I don't know why he has his job here right now. Anyway, you've got the 7th place Spartans taking on the last place Wolverines, a Wolverines team that has lost 8 of its last 9 games, coming off a 88-78 home loss to Iowa on Saturday, a game in which they had 1 field goal in the final 10 minutes. I can't think of anything positive that the Wolverines do on the floor this season. Now, Michigan State is not that good, but they're home. And again, I can't think of anything positive Michigan does this season. So I'm going to go with Michigan State here. Cool little fact here that the home team has been on a red-hot roll. I read that they have won and covered 10 straight in this series. And considering the Spartans are 10-2 at Breslin Center this season straight up, why the hell not lay the points with Michigan State? In fact, between these two plays, I actually like Michigan State more. So there you go. Michigan State and Tennessee, your two complimentary plays tonight. Good luck, everybody, and talk to you again soon.